believes that South Africa walking away from the Rugby Championship would be a mistake, even as debate intensifies over whether the world champions could or should pursue a future in the Six Nations. Speaking alongside fellow Springboks great Schalk Burger, de Villiers weighed in on one of the most complex issues facing modern rugby: how to align a fractured global calendar while protecting player welfare, preserving tradition, and ensuring commercial sustainability. Their discussion comes at a time when SA Rugby is actively pushing for structural change. South Africa has proposed moving the Rugby Championship from its traditional August-October slot to February and March, the same window currently occupied by the Six Nations. The idea is being explored at the ongoing World Rugby Shape of the Game Conference in London. Yet while the proposal aims to bring greater global alignment, it has also reopened a provocative question. If South Africa are already embedded in Northern Hemisphere club rugby, would it make more sense for the Springboks to join the Six Nations entirely? A nation straddling two hemispheres, South Africa occupy a uniquely complex position in the professional era. Their four major franchises compete in the United Rugby Championship and the Investec Champions Cup, aligning their domestic calendar with Europe. At the same time, the Springboks remain committed to the Rugby Championship alongside New Zealand, Australia, and Argentina. This dual alignment has created undeniable strain. Because the franchise season mirrors the Northern Hemisphere, while the international season remains tied to the Southern Hemisphere, several elite South African players effectively operate across a 12-month cycle. That reality inevitably raises concerns around player welfare, rest periods, and performance sustainability. It is this tension that has driven SA Rugby's push to reposition the Rugby Championship earlier in the year. Running it alongside the Six Nations could theoretically create a clearer global test window and allow for more defined off-season breaks. However, altering one major tournament inevitably disrupts others. Burger, Six Nations switch not viable. Burger was frank in his assessment of the possibility of South Africa joining the Six Nations outright. While acknowledging the appeal of such a blockbuster competition, he questioned its practical feasibility under current scheduling structures. "I just don't think in the schedule it can work now," Burger explained. "If there's no global season, I don't think we can hop anywhere different." His concerns center on congestion. The Springboks are already committed to the Rugby Championship and, in addition, participate in the expanded Nations Championship concept that sees them host or tour Northern Hemisphere sides such as England, Scotland, and Wales during the July window. Adding the Six Nations to that mix would create an unsustainable load. "We've got the Rugby Championship and now the Nations Championship where we play England, Scotland, Wales in July," Burger said. "I don't know if we can join the Six Nations. I don't think currently it is viable. It would make for one hell of a competition, but then what happens to the Rugby Championship?" That final question strikes at the heart of the debate. The Rugby Championship remains a historically significant and commercially important tournament for Southern Hemisphere rugby. Abandoning it would have deep ramifications for Australia, New Zealand, and Argentina, as well as for global balance. De Villiers. Leaving would be a mistake. While Burger expressed doubt about Six Nations participation, de Villiers went further by warning against exiting the Rugby Championship altogether. "If we left the Rugby Championship, I think that would be a mistake," the former center said firmly. From his perspective, South Africa's current dual hemisphere presence offers competitive advantages. Exposure to both Northern and Southern styles sharpens tactical versatility and broadens player experience. "At this stage, we're still playing in both hemispheres, and that's beneficial for us," de Villiers explained. He sees merit in SA Rugby's proposal to move the Rugby Championship earlier in the year, arguing that such a shift could bring the sport closer to a genuine global season. "I think that brings us closer to a global season," he said. "We're already playing in the Northern Hemisphere from a club point of view. Now, if you bring the Rugby Championship during this period as well, it will influence Super Rugby. Australia and New Zealand will have to adapt, but I think it brings you closer, and there is a dedicated time for the players to be able to rest." In other words, the solution may not lie in abandoning Southern Hemisphere competition, but in reconfiguring it to align more coherently with global rhythms. New Zealand resistance any meaningful reform. However, faces resistance, particularly from New Zealand. A February, March Rugby Championship would collide with established domestic structures, such as Super Rugby and the NPC. Broadcasters, sponsors, and grassroots systems are all calibrated around the current calendar. New Zealand administrators have signaled reluctance to overhaul a model that, from their perspective, remains effective. For them, change introduces financial and competitive uncertainty. Australia's position appears more flexible, but without New Zealand's backing, large-scale transformation remains unlikely. The logistical puzzle on paper, South Africa joining the Six Nations may appear logical. Their franchises already compete in European competitions, travel routes and broadcast partnerships are established, and the commercial appeal of a Springboks presence in Europe's premier tournament would be enormous. Yet the calendar reality tells a different story. De Villiers pointed out that juggling the Six Nations, URC, Investec Champions Cup, and Rugby Championship within a single year would be impossible. In terms of the Six Nations and whether South Africa can join, we won't be able to do. Six Nations, URC, Investec Champions Cup, and then the Rugby Championship. He said, therefore, joining the Six Nations would likely require withdrawing from the Rugby Championship, a step he believes would undermine valuable competitive ties. The Rugby Championship has, for decades, provided high-intensity clashes against New Zealand and Australia that have shaped the Springboks' identity. Walking away would not simply be a scheduling adjustment. It would represent a philosophical shift, competitive balance, and tradition. There is also the broader question of what Six Nations expansion would mean for Europe. De Villiers, careful to remove national bias from his assessment, praised the quality and competitiveness of the current Six Nations campaign. It's been a fantastic Six Nations, he noted. It's been competitive. Wales at the weekend, they will bloody kick themselves for losing that game. It's a competition that is working. From that standpoint, European unions may feel little incentive to disrupt a proven formula. Not putting a South African cap on, but putting a Six Nations cap on, I wouldn't include any teams with the quality that they have currently, De Villiers added. The implication is clear. The Six Nations, as it stands, is commercially strong and competitively compelling. Expansion carries risk. Player welfare at the center underlying every argument is the issue of player welfare. Modern Test rugby is more physically demanding than ever. Travel, collision intensity, and congested fixtures increase the risk of burnout and injury. South Africa's unique alignment across hemispheres exacerbates those pressures that a more unified global season could offer clearer rest windows and improved recovery cycles. However, restructuring must genuinely reduce load rather than merely reshuffle. De Villiers believes that repositioning the Rugby Championship could create a dedicated time for the players to be able to rest. Critics counter that without reducing the total number of fixtures, welfare gains may be marginal. At a crossroads for global rugby, the discussions unfolding at World Rugby Shape of the Game Conference could shape the next decade of international rugby. Stakeholders must weigh commercial security against innovation, tradition against evolution. For South Africa, the stakes are particularly high. Their success in recent years has been built on adaptability, thriving in European club competitions while maintaining Southern Hemisphere rivalries. The final word, the idea of the Springboks facing England, France, and Ireland annually in the Six Nations is undeniably tantalizing. It would be, as Burger put it, one hell of a competition. Yet rugby's ecosystem is delicate. Remove one component and others shift. For now, South Africa remained committed to the Rugby Championship while advocating for calendar reform. Whether that reform materializes depends largely on cooperation from New Zealand and other stakeholders.